It's really a great pleasure to be welcoming Simone and Andrea from Formafantasma. I think you all know, but they are the ones who have designed this beautiful exhibition, and it was a pleasure really working with you. I'm going to have a brief introduction. So Andrea Trimarchi and Simone Farresin, of Formafantasma, their collaboration on this project has articulated our ideas around medium as more than material. So like us, they have an expanded understanding of medium as an atmosphere that can create new connections between artwork. Formafantasma was founded 16 years ago, while Andrea and Simone were studying at the Design Academy in Eindhoven. Since 2009, their work has transformed how we think about exhibition spaces. Instead of traditional white-walled galleries, they realize flexible environments using ephemeral, light-touch spatial design with materials like textile and lighting. Based between Milan and Rotterdam, Formafantasma approach each project with a study of context, including histories of materials and place. And rather than treating exhibition space as neutral containers, they actively engage with architecture and the life of artworks. Their recent projects include major exhibitions, and an upcoming one at Fondation Cartier, but also at the Olivetti store in Venice, at the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. And your practice, I think you also made a comment that it's not only about exhibition design, but you also participate as designers. And one of the exhibitions that you mentioned in an essay that you contributed to and that will be soon published as part of this exhibition is that you, sorry, I forgot my line of thought. Is that you speak about the white wall and how you wish that that next time we consider exhibition design not as a supportive exercise for exhibition, but more as an integral part and a visible part of exhibitions.
Yes, correct. Me and Andrea, we started working since 2009, but we started working with exhibition design much later. We started as designers, we tend to actually think about exhibition design, first of all, because of our own work when we present it. And then only later, the first show we did was about Caravaggio, Bernini, and their contemporaries at the Rijksmuseum. What I think it is interesting about working with exhibition design is that, first of all, it is a way for us to relate to people that especially have been working in Italy and we admire for a long time, like Carlo Scarpa or Albini, that have been extensively working with exhibition design in a way that is so authorial and so fantastic that sometimes you go in a museum to actually see the exhibition design and not the artworks. And so we have always been admiring their work so deeply that when we had a chance to work with exhibition design, we wanted to somehow try to compete with that legacy. There is another element that for us is extremely interesting and which is the reason why we are interested in exhibition design, is that very often exhibition design is interpreted as a way of serving the artwork, but we see it in a very different way. We see it as a way entering conversation with the artwork, and we actually hate the idea of serving somebody else. So whenever we do our own work, we actually want to make sure that we also can say something. It is almost like as you as a curator, when you put together a show, you're not only serving the artwork, but you also say something when you put together the selections of different works. And so in a way, it is a curatorial practice too.
So I want to understand, you clarified that you hate the word scenography, and we're using why? What is the difference between exhibition design and scenography?
Well, the act of like designing, of course, is something that is different than simply being a background. And scenography often, especially when we think about the scenography of theater, refer more to an idea of background, and not really...
And of fakeness
and
also.
fakeness, yeah.
There is an element, as Andrea pointed out very well, the scenography is something that is on the back, where the main things perform in the front. But it's a very, this never works. This is a problem that we also have even in filmic sense in movies, or in natural documentaries, for instance. You have an animal in the front and you have a landscape on the back, which is a background. But how nature works, for instance, is there is not such a thing as a background and a forefront. So it's also a way of looking at the world, which is very banal.
That's why often when we work with exhibition design, we really love the idea of and the word relation. Also, you can see it within this show. The show is about relation, and when you relate, you need to interfere. You need to kind of go also in front of the main actor. That is, in this case, sometimes an artwork. In the case of the exhibition.
Then plus there is another complication, and it's that in contemporary art exhibition language, there is a canon, which is the white space, that is there because it is a very interesting way of presenting art, because it is about suspending the artwork in a space that is as neutral as possible, so that the work can be anything. You know, if you, you know, you can, if you enter in an abstract space, let's say everything is white, you can put a plug on a wall, and that becomes an artwork, because that you can notice it, you can look at it within a world of abstraction, which is fantastic. But there are equal problems with it. So we think that it's a bit strange that we bound to one way of constructing exhibition spaces, because it means also that all the rest is excluded. It feels a canon that needs to be, and we all know in the contemporary art world there is this conversation since forever, that there is no such a thing as an abstract space. Architecture and the world speaks no matter what. And I think we got to a point where the white cube, once it was a way of allowing art to be, and now it's generating art. And we see it when we receive the specs of the artist, the requests. The works are generated thinking that the work can exist based on specific conditions.
Only on that specific condition. And you know very well when you work with artists, you know, things should be within walls, audio should never spill, you know, and
talking about audio not spilling, so how did you deal with the fact that you had a number of audiovisual presentations? And I think from the very early conversation, we're talking about porous surfaces, about the artwork communicating and creating that narrative and that story that links artwork to each other. And you were very adamant that as much as possible, you would like to avoid having these black, enclosed environments to experience these audiovisual presentations.
Which was very loved by the producers, because it costs much more to do a very closed space.
We were, exactly, there was...
But since you are all sitting there, you can also see there is a space here for a video where the walls don't even touch. They are not even fully put together. That's one of the details we love the most about this exhibition. Because it's this idea that, first of all, I like to see works that are a little bit challenged. We want to make sure when we do exhibition design to present very well the works and to respect them, but to challenge them a little bit. So the conditions here was a requirement of a perfect enclosed space.
Yeah, something.
But I think it is interesting to also respect the artwork, but also challenge it a little bit, to exist in a world that is not perfect, that is not abstract. If you think about, sorry, and then I conclude, even the building we are in here, or all the buildings here in Abu Dhabi, there is a specific requirement to live here, which is to have spaces, for instance, all fully air conditioned. Otherwise, we could not live in this world. But I think since the work of art is very often reflecting or reactions to the world, and being in the middle of an ecological crisis, to see art sort of requiring and refusing I almost feel it's a refusal of the acknowledgement of a reality which is in crisis, the needs of live in a perfect conditioned space. So for us, it's small steps, but to do not always fully comply with the requirement of an artwork is also to see the works more in relation with one another and also put that little bit into crisis. Very often, it is best for the work because if a work is very good, it survives these little challenges.
Yeah, something that we will never compromise is, for instance, routing. So you could see very easily with this exhibition, you know, for me it's fine to have like audio spilling or like overlapping of screens and works, but I would never like to lose work while walking in the space. So for instance, something that you can totally see walking in this 4,000 square meter, it's quite a large space, you will not lose one work walking through the space. And for me, this is very important.
I think for the artist, your words are so frustrating to them because the new media artist, Korean new media artist, really want to black rooms in in the exhibition. But I know as this exhibition designers for this exhibition, prepare to open installation. As curator, I prepare to honestly, I prepare to like your positioning, but the request from the artist is really specific and very challenging. So it's a kind of coordinating each other is. As a curator, it's a very tough job.
I know, that's why we
As
never
we
want to talk with the
experienced.
artists. We always say the curators, you end up the artists.
Exactly, actually. Yes, you did put us as a buffer zone. But so again, let's go back a little bit on some of the decisions that you took. We see, for instance, platforms. It's very interesting how we introduced platforms within the spaces. You decided also the sizes of the platforms in relation to the work, the location of these platforms, and not only also platform, also the introduction of textile, which also we can explore a bit more.
Yeah, you know, we have been asked to write a text for the catalog regarding the exhibition design, and we wrote quite a long text, but we wrote very little about the exhibition because we said we want to also see it first before elaborating it further. So now we've seen it, and it confirms what we wanted to achieve. But so dimensions of platforms. There is very often platforms are used in a dimension that serves the protections of the artwork. But sometimes I think it is interesting to exaggerate dimensions so that at one point the platforms enter in a different kind of conversation with the artworks and it becomes a space in itself. And it allows the artworks not to be only protected but to speak within a larger space and a larger dimension. There is another aspect that I wanted to mention, which is actually not about platform, but it is related to it. For us, what was important is that the exhibition felt really a group show, so that you could see works in relation. So one thing that, for instance, we really like is that when you enter in the show, of course, you have the work of Namjoon Paik, and there are several works where you see multiple mediums coming together, such as painting and TVs and installations. In the self-portrait Namjoon Paik, you see paintings on top of a screen.
Yes.
But if you go ahead in the exhibition, for instance, you see the painting of
Mokali.
yeah, exactly. Thank you. With a man extending the arms, and you see it because it's not mounted on a full wall, but on an open structure. You see it overlapping with videos at the end of the room. So again, it's almost repeating what Namjoon Paik was doing with the screens and painting over it, but in a spatial way. So we were interested in all these kind of relations. And if you, and this was possible only working with lighter structures, hence the metal suspending the objects, and having platforms to protect the work, and to give a different framing, which is not vertical. You have a painting on top of a wall, and the wall is somehow framing the artwork in itself. In this way, the wall is somehow collapsed on the floor and becomes a platform. And the work then is standing but in relation to video's work on the back. And these are the things we
And the
find it exciting.
majority of artwork, they are not actually against the wall, but the walls are actually only support for the latter structure. So we also like how we didn't use the obvious choice of using a wall for, hanging a painting.
And can you comment on the colors that you used?
So, because it's also interesting to challenge the idea of the white cube on a very basic level, so not making it white. I think we were adamant, because we knew that the exhibition could never be really bright, because of course of all the media presented in the exhibition and projections and so on. So we made a selections of colors which are almost nocturnal colors. If you think about when you are towards the end of the day, you have tones of colors that tends to become quite subtle, but with brighter accents, such as, for instance, the pistache color. Here you have the lilac, you have the blue, you have the brown. It's what we call nocturnal color, or the colors of when the sunset is going down. Well, maybe not here in Abu Dhabi, because it's much more orange, but when I think about, for instance, colors of nature towards the night, they becomes these sort of strange, very subtle colors. And so we wanted to have this palette, which for us works in this moment of slight darkness. And also we think these are colors that enter well in conversations with the digital medias. It's also sometimes you can explain things in a very rational way, but it's also an intuitive way that you work, and we feel these colors works in this way. Sorry, there is another thing that I realized I want to mention.
We mentioned textile.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, we talked several times about textiles in exhibition space. There is a level of love for textile that we have, because first of all, it's a much more intimate material. It is also historically, there's many exhibition designers we've loved that have been using textile. It is also a reference to more, I would say, now what are now considered old-fashioned ways of presenting artworks with textile-covered walls and so on. So it is also a reference to that. But the reason why we love textile is mostly because of the sense of intimacy and lightness that it gives. We generally don't like plastered walls. We make use of plastered walls in these exhibitions, but they are monoliths, they are self-standing. They don't pretend to be a full wall in a way. And textile is we feel it's a sensitive way of dividing space. Here also it allows you to peek through and to see works again in relation to one another. There is one another thing that I would like to mention that I think it's very important to us in exhibition design. It's not often achievable, but I think here, yes, because we had an open space, is that very often when you go in a show, the perception you have of artworks is in relation to scale. So if an artwork is extremely sculptural and big, it tends to, of course, be more present, more noticeable for visitors. And this hierarchy of dimensions, we don't really like it, because you can have like also some very small work, which is fantastic, but suddenly the big work is the hero of the installation. So what we try to do here in space is to try to equalize more the works and to render something that is maybe two-dimensional sculptural in some cases. So for instance, you have tapestry that are presented almost as a sculpture in space. And to see, not always we achieve that, to equalize hierarchies and to make sure that even the smallest works could somehow raise to the importance of bigger works. Yes.
When we started the conversation very early on, when we were describing the space, we tried to talk a bit that there are these outside walls, they're white, we're not able to touch them. They're also, it's not a perfect space. It has, the floor is quite, it's concrete, but it has a lot of patches. The walls have things on them that we're not allowed to touch. And then we discuss, okay, how we play with light in terms to isolate a little bit the wall, to have a concentration that more is around the structure that we're building. And then surprisingly, we have Chris Durkan who comes in, and then he is completely taken by all of these patches on the wall and these imperfections. And so can you comment on that? Because suddenly becomes part of this exhibition space that is...
Yeah, but that's also, that's the reality of the world we are living in. We are living in a dirty world, and I mean, in a way, this is also part of the reality we are in. But that's why also we decided never to touch the wall. So as you can see, whatever installation we have here, whatever wall or boxes or room, they are within the space of at least 2 meters and more distant from the walls. The same for the flooring. We added here a carpet, but not in other spaces, because for us this is a space in which you would really look at the floor. We are sitting, and so you need to have a kind of a certain comfort. But while you are walking through the space, you would see that as a background. You almost don't notice anymore the floor. So, I mean, these are, of course, obvious choices. And again, it's about sometimes, that's why we say we work contextually. When you work, you need to be contextual. And that's a way of doing it for us.
The imperfections on the walls, or you see plugs, you see exit, you see cables. This is a byproduct. It was not intentional, but I think it's fantastic, especially for the theme of the exhibition, because there's also a lot to talk about infrastructure, about media, as we have been hearing also in the presentation before. So these undesirable features suddenly root the work in reality and makes it even better. Yeah, I think this is in a way what we're advocating for, to see works in reality in a way.
Yeah, as a museum curator, it was so shocked. This kind of
I
thing.
understand.
Yeah.
We are totally aware of that, because I mean, when we work in museums, we work with a museum standard. But when we designed the Venice Biennale 4 years ago of Cecilia Alemani, the spaces of the Arsenale, and actually also the Giardini one, are exactly the same of here. I mean, we don't see it anymore, but there are bricks, there are cable everywhere. The Italian pavilion, that is the second venue where there is the international exhibition, it was, I mean, now it's closed because they are restoring it, because it was a mess. We had piping going everywhere, leak water.
And it's not that we really love that too.
No, but again, it's probably the reality of the space outside of the museum space.
Yeah.
You said, I mean, is this the biggest exhibition in terms of scale that you've worked on?
No, Venice Biennial is the biggest.
Oh yeah, it's true, absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
That scale is
40,000 square
the undesirable scale of Venice Biennial.
All right. So
but it's one of the biggest, yes, in terms of space, yes.
Okay, and you were saying that now that you came and you saw the space, is there anything else that you would have changed with hindsight now that you've seen the space, you've seen how the design worked within and the works?
Well, there's a few things, but I think we should not mention.
Okay, all right. Next question.
No, I think
Okay.
I think there's a few things.
Commenting on your essay, we also said that it's a beautiful essay. It's primarily based on the concept of the white cube, but you also incorporated your approach to this exhibition. Again, now that you've seen the exhibition, are there any other points that you would mention now?
Well, there's already in the conversation we had points that we mentioned that are not included in the essay. So I think it's too quick to say. I think already we start to notice more things.
Yes.
But I think it takes time to fully digest even your own work.
Okay.
There's always surprises when you do works. You cannot know everything in advance. You also need to work intuitively and hope for the best.
Okay, so from the first conversation, what were the triggers? What were the information that we shared that really shaped your approach to this exhibition?
Well, first of all, the space itself. So there is one thing that, sorry, now I criticize curators and not you, but in general. There's
Okay.
one thing that it's very obvious, because that's the right, like, curators must have a role, which is a complete understanding and deep dive in the work itself. This leads to observe works very up close. And sometimes you lose sometimes the bigger picture and the awareness. Not all curators don't have this, but a lot of curators forget that, first of all, exhibition making is a spatial experience. You know, when you build a catalog, when you write a book, that's one way of understanding the work. You put in space, you have a different understanding of the work. So the first thing that you gave us that affected the exhibition is, first of all, the space itself. If you remember, you said you were afraid that the space was too big for the quantities of works. We were so excited that we had this little amount of work in this big space, because it allowed us to conceive an exhibition you can walk up to the work and not stumbling upon the work, which is already so different, because you can decide to walk up to a work. You encounter the work with your body in a different way, which is super exciting. The second thing is the work themselves. But I don't mean this only in terms of meaning. Of course, there was that too. But you need also to think about works as objects in space. So you need to know the knowledge about the work. And for instance, I remember when we talk about the work of Nanjung Paik, Moon is the oldest TV, you made a comment about the work in itself, and we changed the way of displaying the work because you were totally right. But very often, you need to also intuitively place the work in space and understand them, how they relate to one another as a spatial experience, even before, based on subdivisions of meaning, because the artworks, they are things in space before even to be meaningful objects in themselves. So then you start to work in space intuitively, and then you go back to the meaning and you see if it works or if it doesn't.
Yes.
It's a bit upside down. It's upside down.
I have to, yes. I feel that, yeah. But, to experience an artwork within the space is a totally different meaning to the viewers. As a curator, I always think about that. Yeah, but I have a kind of a dual emotion think about that. One is this is the artwork by artist. It presents artist conception and perspective fully, and the other one is the artworks within the gallery. Then it's a different meaning of art. It changed it, to the relationship between viewers, audiences, and the space. In the space, I think it's a kind of dialogue between them, among them. Besides curators, right?
I completely agree. When you do a group show, inevitably the meaning of the artwork in itself changes, that you like it or not. So what we are saying is, better embrace it.
Yeah, but it's really hard to embrace it. Yeah.
Of course. But in fact, if you well, you haven't read the text that we wrote for the catalog, but if you in it, there is a lot of struggle in our side. We're not saying. We criticize the white cube, we criticize this idea of isolation of the work, but at the same time we also recognize there is potential and value in that too. So it's difficult it's not that we have answers, but it's interesting to keep on working on this, because you have all these things you can challenge, and it's exciting.
Okay, now that we're revealing all of the conversations that you've been having throughout this exhibition, one key point also that you really pondered on is how to present the archive. So, I mean, archive now are becoming increasingly part of exhibition making, a number of exhibitions, and we were really debating of how to present it, whether we present it at the beginning. We were very keen to present that at the beginning, but then how to present it in a way that is not fully academic, that is not heavy, or that is not intimidating. But also, we were unsure about what is the archive that we were going to present. So also that modular aspect of being able to present archive.
Well, that comes probably also from the experience that we have as the other side of our practice, because also we do exhibition where
Yes.
we have like archive as a main topic. So for us, it's very important again to show archiving in relation to each other, and also using different media. So the table that we are at the entrance, I would say that is almost like an extract of an exhibition that at the moment it's at the Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam. That is called Oltreterra, but it's our own show. It was an investigation around the relation between human and animal. And we were using this very, very large table. I mean, the one we used was 10 times bigger than that. But the idea was really to create also an experience that is much different. So it's not, for instance, vertical, it's horizontal, as you probably have when you study archives. But also you have these layers. So between movies, they are like vertical, and instead in the horizontal part, you have like the more archival and document objects.
I find archives extremely exciting because they, while of course they are curated, but they are meant to be appropriated and used, while an artwork not. So what I find interesting about archives is that you can use them to say whatever you want. And I even think that, especially with historical works, it would be interesting to see exhibition that treats artworks not as artworks but as archives. To allow artworks to say things. I mean, you can use artworks as the authorial thing, but you can also use an artwork as a testament of its time. And I think it would be interesting to go very extreme with that idea, that you can use artworks as a text, as something you can not manipulate with the idea of manipulation, but of
well, in anthropological museum, you often have objects. Objects are most of the time used to talk also about way of living. And what we do like, and I mean, the exhibition at the Stedelijk was really trying to do that, is to compare object to artwork to documents, to kind of like mix all those languages to kind of restitute one different message.
And in that case, in a way, then it's we overrule the meaning of things because they become our own work. But we've seen this in the practice of artists, the use of archives or the use of other works to become the work in itself, and that's super exciting. And in a way, exhibition design could do that too.
Do you have any comment on the archive, because it's quite?
Yeah, the only thing I want to working with the archive in the exhibition is they don't talk. Yeah, like with other artists. Yeah, they don't talk.
No,
I
of
cannot
course.
No
talk.
feedback.
Yeah, no feedback. Yeah, totally.
That's what I mean, like you can appropriate, you can do whatever you want with it.
He was more comfortable with you
Once a
dealing with
curator told us that the best way to do exhibitions is when the artist is passed
dead.
away.
But the estate, still remain.
Yeah, it's true. Sometimes it can be worse. Yeah.
But I mean, of course, it is a joke. I mean, long life to all of us.
You both said that we would like to see a future in which exhibition design is not always cast in the role of the silent enabler. Do you think that you achieved this in this exhibition?
Yes, but we can be.
More, even
Yeah,
more? Oh,
yes.
You're very you're greedy.
No, it's not greediness. It's just that it's it's always interesting to see how far you can go in things.
No, but it's also for me. It's again when we mentioned at the beginning the work of Carlos Scarpa or Albini, there have been like architects in the past that they were commissioned to make a permanent exhibition. At the moment, they are still so important, almost more important than the artwork. And I would say that I can't wait to do like a permanent installation where we can really play and become stable, like become something that stays.
There's so many interesting things one can do There's, like for instance, if you think about benches, you go in a museum, the trademark of sitting and contemplating works is on a bench. But then you go in a museum designed by Albini, and then suddenly you find a chair. When you sit on it, you sink in it, and you feel like a tomb. And suddenly the relation with the work is completely different. So we're thinking a lot about why is the position of the body in a certain way, why there's no gathering spaces in a museum, for instance. Only the private collectors can sit in a sofa and look at an artwork. Why cannot citizens live with an artwork for a while and have a chat, for instance, with their peers? I mean, I'm going extreme here, but why not? It will be so interesting to see museums, instead of becoming a formula, experimenting different ways of living with the works.
All right, I'm going to push it here. If you had complete carte blanche in this exhibition, what would you have done?
No, probably something very similar.
Okay.
Yes, but because we
glad to
didn't,
hear
I mean, we
did
talked
you
about
did
it.
have carte blanche in a way.
Exactly, indeed, and yeah, it was really great to work with you because it was this really also trust and very similar. Yeah, not the same probably.
Absolutely, it was a really. I mean, I think everybody felt it anyway. There was so much harmony in our work and how we presented this exhibition and the way the audience received this exhibition. Sur ce, any questions from the audience?
It's a two-part question, and the parts are not related to each other. At the beginning of your chat, you discussed that you guys need to be brought in, or you feel that you are brought in far too late in the process. But how do you, when would you best want to be involved in this process, given the curators, like, they're very controlling, your curators, yeah? So when would you think that, when do you think that they would allow or want, and again, it's for both sides here of this, when do you think is the best time for them to be brought in, and when do you insist on being brought in? That's the first part. Second part is not related at all to that discussion. The second part is related to white box type of environment for display and your hated black box environment for display of whatever, multimedia and whatnot. My question is, what if you get this stupid or crazy artist who wants to have a completely reflective wall, like a mirror, maybe a stainless steel, where the artwork is somewhere along it? How would you, and what would you recommend? How would that fit in the norm of what you're doing and how it would be created? Because I have some crazy ideas and I want to test it with you guys. Thank you.
So do you want to, well, so to answer your first question, so I think it depends from project to project. I think with the project we did together, we enter in the good moment. So the work was there, the checklist was almost done. We had short time. At the beginning we were very scared because usually we work on a much longer period. In certain other project, it's important to be at the beginning because, for instance, we are doing at this moment an exhibition for the Vitra Design Museum in Switzerland, in Valais in Germany, about shaker community, the American shaker community, and the way we work for the exhibition influence a lot also the way the curator choose the artwork. So if we work there too late, we couldn't do what we are doing right now in the exhibition. So I would say in general, I would prefer to be day first. Then also following the curatorial approach while we are forming the idea of the exhibition design. Once the checklist, it's like on a good shape, like I would say 50%, then we start to work on it. Personally, I would like to be involved since day one. It's much more, I would say, much more efficient, and we can also have an influence in the way curator curate. Do you want to add something else?
I can respond also to the other question. regarding the questions, if an artist proposes something that can sound crazy, well, of course, because we are also authors too of our own work, we would always respect the request of an artist. So if an artist has a need, of course we are going to listen to that need. What we realize in exhibition making is that, but we are in that way too, that because very often the artists are not aware of the full scope of the exhibition, they might be against certain ideas because they don't know how better it would be to change certain things. So it is also a matter of awareness. Sometimes we hate, when our work has been presented, we also hated sometimes the way it was presented. Yeah, indeed, most of the time. So we also understand artists. So it is a tricky situation. I think.
But would you avoid this in an exhibition?
Yes.
You would.
Yes. Yes. I mean, we would never say no. Like if a curators propose something, well, there's also something else that we need to acknowledge. So sometimes we work on our own work where we select archival materials and multiple medias. Then there we do whatever we want. We are our own boss, so we do whatever. When it is a collective endeavor, of course, we are respecting the wishes of a curator and the artist and all the rest. What we see is that when the conversation becomes complicated, there's also sometimes an overstepping in parts. There is a hierarchy in exhibition making. There is the artist, there is curators, and the exhibition designer. Sometimes that is irritating, because then sometimes you are told to do things that you think are wrong. And so generally when things go down that road, the final outcome is never great, because then it's full of compromises. But honestly, isn't this the case for any kind of work? Yeah, so it's the same.
I mean, for us, it was very important before we start talking to Formafantasma is that we have a clear idea of what this exhibition is about. I mean, no, when we're co-curating, we're figuring it out together. Yes, absolutely. And actually, it's very interesting because Kay was saying that she doesn't. Do you want me to say that or not? All right. Well, it's very difficult to co-curate in general because when you have, especially if you have a clear vision of.
Because I said to Maya about the co-curating, because I don't believe co-curating is, How, curating is very individual thing, but but how can work with someone else, not me, not myself? How can we, you are different.
But we were able, in this, I mean, we both have a very positive experience.
At the first stage, Chris?
I have a question. I mean, there is so much love on this panel. I would like to ask a question which is about love and hate. And there is a lot of love and hate from exhibition designers for texts in exhibitions, texts on walls. Sometimes they are barely readable, they are too low, they are too dark, and I'm looking at you guys, they're way too long with a language which nobody understands. So can we talk about love and hate on this love panel?
Yes. Well, we can talk about text. Well, we can talk about love and hate. I mean, we didn't, of course, design the text because, of course, there is graphic design involved in that. Regarding the length of text, we are adamant for defending long text in exhibitions. Yes. Yeah, but it's because you're a museum director, so you need to care about the general public. No, the reason why I'm saying this is because we started to see really a problem with the museums everywhere where we go, which is this obsession for that everybody should be able to understand the text. But when I grow up, and we are really defending this, the things that I loved the most were the things that I couldn't understand. So I think to be challenged, to read things you don't understand, I think it's a matter of letting people know that it's okay not to understand. I read plenty of books that I don't understand in full. And that's fine. Because
Thank
it takes
you.
time.
Thank you so much.
But isn't it? But do you literally?
Thank you.
I'm sure that there's plenty of intelligent people here, but we still read text we don't understand.
Yes, absolutely.
And is that
All the
fine?
time.
I think it's fine. We just need to let people know that it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, like talking about this, we all been to, at least we have been to the Venice Biennale this year. We cannot comment. I don't want to do any bad comment about that. Indeed.
You did already.
But, they were like these very, very long texts, and they did the AI-generated short text that I found probably was the most interesting things of the entire exhibition. Because in a way, sometimes you need to have the slogan, like you need to have like the one phrase that you get the work. I agree. Yes, totally. It's yes, but then again, that's something we also discussed at the beginning, and again, we didn't. We were not in charge of the text here, but it's something that we also believe that graphic designers should be involved since day one in the curatorial practice, because it's important. Like sometimes text become like one of the major medium within the exhibition, so you cannot attach it at the end. So it needs to be really well conceived since the beginning.
And we were very lucky this year with our graphic designer. Dina did a phenomenal job, I think, in my opinion.
And but in general, I think it would be, for instance, when we did an exhibition on so our own work, we did a solo show, let's put it in this way, so where we presented the works, and there, for instance, we had two different levels of information and interpretation. One that is part of the work. So we asked a friend of us, who is a philosopher, Emanuele Coccia. We talked about our intentions, we talked about things, and then he wrote an authorial text, which became interpretations in the work, but it's a work in itself. And then we have a booklet where you have instead much more descriptive informations. But we really love to work with all these different possibilities and codes of exhibition making and make them work in themselves. I find that super exciting. But anyway.
But to answer your question about love and hate, I think there's a lot of love in this exhibition. The only thing that we unanimously hate in general is the word budget. So, but that we need to negotiate.
Yeah, that's really a good one.
So, and the thing is that we can always attribute every mistake that we make or every shortfall to the word budget. But yeah.
Even when it's not true.
Even when it's not true, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry, there's one more question. Sorry.
You took my question at the beginning of your talk. I was going to ask you if you feel you are influenced by Carlo Scarpa and Franco Albini. You opened your speech with that, and also Andrea closed the talk with the same reaffirmation. So I'm turning my question on a different point of view. Since you are Italian with an Italian background, inspired by Italian masters, how do you think your international experience and background and practice influence your design and your exhibit design in particular? And then related to the specific exhibition, do you think you had any influence from Korean or Eastern culture or architecture or design in general, because you were designing an exhibition for Korea? And on the other side, any influence or thought about designing an exhibition for a Middle Eastern country?
Many questions. So the first one is about the background. Yes. Biographical questions are always difficult because you don't really know really deeply what influenced you. So I don't think the international background influenced us.
No, I would say yes. The first show that we did was about Caravaggio and Bernini at the Rijksmuseum. So it was, in any case, the first explore was with the masters of Italian painting. So it was quite a challenging one. And I have to say, for me, it was quite impressive how, for instance, Dutch curators and director were dealing with young designers never work with exhibition design, and they completely leave us like carte blanche. And I found that after that experience, quite difficult to have the same freedom. Really, we had completely freedom, and doing exhibition design in Italy is difficult because the bureaucratic structure and museum.
Because you need to be old to be reliable.
Exactly, you need to be old, and then there is like a lot of complication also and regulation to apply for certain kinds of job. So I think that experience helped us a lot in understanding which kind of approach we could have. Probably was similar commission that Carlo Scarpa got in Castelvecchio almost. Like you have like a space, do what you want. It was a bit like that, the kind of commission that we got from the Rijks.
And regarding the questions, if we think about audience and specific context, so here we need to be really honest. We design shows for ourselves. We design the shows that we would like to see. In the hope, because we don't think we are so special, that other people will enjoy it too.